there might be some other folks join us. We'll see. So welcome everybody. I'll just say a few sort of Zoom etiquette things, and then we'll introduce John, if that's okay. So I'm sure the vast majority of you will know by now that when you're not speaking, if you can mute yourself, that would be really helpful. I would also say, when John's speaking, it might be that you think, I've got a cracking question I want to ask, and you don't have a pen and paper. By all means, down at the bottom or at the top, depending how you've set out your display, you'll see chat. So just click on that. And if you want to ask it directly to John, click his name. If you want to say it in total to everyone, you can put it there. And I'm sure we'll catch up with that a bit later on. I've already said about the recording aspect. So we just, as I say, welcome everybody on behalf of the Desford Men's Group. And it's lovely to see so many old faces and not so old faces.
Not so old.
Yeah, I added that in, Roger. I added that in. But and we'll introduce John. Now, most of you, I think, know John much better than I know, because I've only had a couple of conversations with him. But he's going to be speaking about his work as the LAC, and he'll do everything else. That's the only bit of introduction. But we're really grateful for you taking the time to share with us, and we're really looking forward to what you've got to share with us. Over to you, John.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me along. So I thought what I've done, I've made just a few notes about some of the principles of local area coordination and what our aims are. I'll explain a little bit, just a wee bit about my background within Leicestershire County Council, and then because what we do is so broad and it's so varied, it's nothing like I've ever done before within Leicestershire County Council. I've been doing it for 6 years, so sometimes it's best to give examples of the work we do, and then if people want to ask questions after that, great. So I've been with Leicestershire County Council now about 24 years. I've worked in mental health, I've worked at Carlton Hayes, Bradgate unit. I worked in mental health within social services, and then older persons team, day centres, and my last 6 years was spent with the transitions team, which is learning disabilities, children that were transitioning from the children's service to adult services. And then 6 years ago, I moved into local area coordination. It was new in Leicestershire. I'm employed by Leicestershire County Council, but in public health now rather than adults and communities. And so our work, if you'll bear with me because I'm reading from this for a moment. So we work with adults across the whole population of the areas. My areas that I've got are Desford, Newbold, Verdon, Bocheston and Thornton. So we couldn't possibly cover all areas in Hinckley and Bosworth because there's only 3 of us. There's 18 local area coordinators in total in Leicestershire, but spread across Leicestershire in different localities. But for Hinckley and Bosworth, there's the 3. Myself, colleague Laura and Bev. Laura covers Barwell and Earl Shilton, and Bev does Hinckley Town. So we work with adults across the whole population over a wide range of issues. We operate to 10 principles. I won't go into those principles because there's just really no benefit to it. But from a local area coordination point of view, we as local area coordinators adhere to these sort of principles as a guidance. The foundation is what basically does a good life look like to someone, and how can we make that a reality? So how we do it is by walking alongside somebody, really. And so we don't do for, we do with. So we encourage people to be as independent as possible. We connect people to their communities and help them to use their natural assets to improve their communities. So we're very much asset-based. That could be looking at what facilities are around, but it's not just what facilities there are, it's also about the people that are in the villages, the towns, etc., because there's a lot of people with a lot of gifts and skills to give. So we also link in very much with key community people as well. Our work is person-led, and we believe that individuals are the experts when it comes to their own lives. So very often in previous roles, I've had families ring up and say, Mum, Dad needs a package of care or whatever, or they need this, that, and the other. When you actually get to speak to the individual, they're saying that they don't need it and that they can manage. They'll accept some little bit perhaps, but they're the best ones to say what they need. So I think it's fair to say I've had quite a few rows with family members when they've accused me of not doing my job because I'm not putting in a package of care, or I'm not doing this, or I'm not commissioning that. And my stock reply really was, well, perhaps you ought to listen to your mum and your dad yourself, and then we'll go from there. So it's very much person-led, person-centered. We work not only with individuals, but we work with community groups as well. So we help them to be resilient if we can, inclusive, and meet the needs of the people that live there. So the thing that's unique about us as local area coordinators is that we work in specific targeted communities. Now, that's not done by us, that was done by public health. So the reasons for the areas that we're working in was just discussed way above me. So they've got their own data services, data sources for that. The team is based in communities and integrated with people that live and work there. So I work outside of Desford and Newbold Library, so I've got a bit of an office space in both, so I can touch down there with my computer. But prior to COVID, I mean, I was out and about most of the time, so visible. So you get to know people that way rather than being stuck at County Hall, or you're stuck at the hub, or you're stuck somewhere else in another locality office. We are the only team that I know that are community based in that sense. So we are stuck out in whatever community building will have us. We've got an open door policy as far as, we don't call them referrals, we call them introductions. So it doesn't have to come through adult social care. It doesn't have to come through a customer service centre. You can self-refer into us if you like. So, or if you're concerned about a family member or a neighbour, it could be a GP that rings in. It could be a colleague from social care. But it could be something as simple as bumping into me in the street and having a conversation. So that's it. That's how you introduce into us. We're able to provide a responsive and flexible way of connecting with support. And the other thing, the big key thing, is that we're not bound by time. So if we're working with somebody that needs an awful lot of help, it doesn't matter how long that takes. It could take 12 months, 2 years. It's however long it takes for that person. So that's the formal stuff out of the way in a sense. But for me, as I say, 6 years now, I met Pat Crane very early on, and people like Pat in other villages, and they introduced me to other people. So it's really gone from strength to strength in that way. The types of support that we can offer and we help people with, it varies immensely. So it could just be signposting. So a lot of the time, we find that people sometimes don't know where to go. You know, they've got a family member that needs some aids and adaptations, or a wheelchair, or they're struggling, they need a package of care, and sometimes it is as simple as that people don't know who to approach first. So we can be the coordinating bit for that. I'm not an expert in anything. I always say that I'm not a counsellor, I'm not this, I'm not that. But what I've got is a lot of experience of working for the different teams. I've got a lot of experience of the systems for county council, for adult social care. I know a lot of colleagues, so you can sometimes get through the back door in that sense and all the rest of it. So our work can be, it's with adults. We do come into contact with children, because if we're working with a family, then we'll help in that way, but we don't directly work with children. It could be signposting, so somebody wants to know where do they go for this, so we do that. It could be somebody that literally struggling to get out the chair now, so we can get minor adaptations put into place. I've got major adaptations for people, such as wet rooms, stair lifts, things like that. We could work with people on divorce. I've done bankruptcy with somebody where they were in danger of losing the shop, the flat, and goodness knows what else. We don't do it all on our own. We very much work and with other agencies. So can't be expected to know everything about everything. So it's about us finding out what's available in the community and linking in with that. But we'll do that with somebody for as long as it takes. We work with community groups. Excuse me. I've helped set up, for example, the Forget-Me-Nots that was running from Desford and Newbold. That was for people who had dementia or memory. Volunteers from Newbold and Desford and other villages, Thornton, and so on. Could you still hear me? It's just come up with my connection is unstable.
You're okay. Your voice is okay.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
just a bit unstable for the. That's it. You're back on.
Okay. So we helped set up the Forget-Me-Nots, and that just before COVID, it was in my opinion a really good group, because we were sometimes getting 20 people coming along, and it not only provided support for the person with dementia, but it provided support for the carer. The carers had the opportunity to speak to other carers who were in a similar position. We used to put people in touch with an organisation called Vassal, which is Voluntary Action South Leicestershire. They're the carers group, so they could do a carers assessment. They could provide carers with valuable information about various services and things of that nature. So it's very much working, you know, to support the community in whatever way I can. We try and support individuals. Again, Sporting Desford, Jez Edwards was running a State of the Mind project on Thursdays for people with low-level mental health needs. And so that was doing really well. And so people I came into contact with, if they said they wanted to get out a bit more, I would encourage them to go down to Jez. If they needed me to take them perhaps for the first 1 or 2 times, I'd happily do that. But we wouldn't provide transport on an ongoing basis, because people, you know, if we access somebody into a group, it has to be sustainable for that person to be able to get there under their own steam. But we do link in with voluntary transport and things like that. So it's totally different to how I've commissioned services previously. We don't have to make sure that somebody's DBS checked or whatever it might be. We can literally put people into contact, neighbours into contact with each other. One really successful story from the Forget-Me-Nots was that 2 couples really got on well with each other, and they ended up going on a cruise together, taking the husbands, and it was marvellous really, because it provided them both, because they both had difficult times looking after their husband, but the friendship that the 2 ladies developed, it was lovely, because they could go on the cruise and they had a really nice time. So it is what it is. It's massive, really. It can be anything. I've supported people in quite a lot of different ways, and you could go on all night about the different types of work. I mean, I've worked with people for 18 months to 2 years, 2 people in particular, and one was given to me by the GP because they didn't meet the criteria for social care. I mean, the criteria for social care now and for support from social services is quite high now. I think they removed the moderate category some years ago. It's now you have to have a substantial amount of needs under their eligibility criteria. But she wouldn't have met the criteria, and the GP was really concerned that without any support at all, she would be in a terrible place. And I mean, it's fair to say, I think the first half a dozen times we met, she cried every time. And I began to wonder whether that was just me or whether the situation that she was in. And thankfully, it was the situation that she was in. And we sat down, and what we did, we made a list of all the things that was in her mind was the most important things to try and overcome now. Not what the end result would be, but what was the issues, the main things now, to stop her moving forwards. And we did that, and then we worked on that list. And after about 18 months, I ended up going to court with her and all sorts of things. But anyway, we got a good result, and it was a really nice piece of work. But the GP came to me afterwards and sort of said he really, you know, couldn't express enough his gratitude himself, because had it have not been for not just me but local area coordination or some input for that person, they would definitely have slipped through the net, and you know, who knows what might have happened. So it's I love it. I've missed not being out for the last 12 months. because you get to know and meet so many people, and the amount of things that have come about for me as a result of just having a conversation and bumping into somebody in the street, you know, and they'll say, oh, would you be able to go and see so-and-so? A bit worried that they're struggling to get, you know, up the stairs, or they're struggling to get, or they're not themselves. And I always ring them up and I'll just introduce myself. And normally we'd go and have a cup of tea. We'd just say, you know, fancy meeting up, I'll pop round and see you. We'll have a cuppa and a natty, and that's it. There's no official assessments to do like there is in social care. We have paperwork, but it's the split is about 80% out and about, 20% paperwork. We have to do some. So you can literally just, it's as nice as that. You go round, you have a conversation, and you start from there. And in that conversation, hopefully people open up about what it is that's perhaps preventing them from moving on. Some people don't need anything other than to become more involved. Some people want to get involved in the village or the town. And it's amazing how many people I come into contact with who have said they've lived somewhere for quite a number of years, but because they've never particularly needed anything, then they've perhaps lost the wife, the husband, or whatever, then it's opened other things up. So, you know, that they want to get involved more, or they want to access groups, or, I mean, groups and things like that is another big area of my work, because a lot of people, and I think that's going to be really evident once things start opening up now, people are very isolated. I've been doing a lot of wellbeing walks with people. When we were allowed to go out with the guidelines, we met people and just literally went for a walk around the local park, or just around the streets, and just chatted. And a lot of people hadn't got that opportunity open to them because they'd got no family, or they'd got no friend, or whatever you might be. And I've done quite a few of those now, and they've been really, really helpful and beneficial. So in terms of groups, I used to, if I could, I'd meet somebody there. If I could just give them the details, say somebody was interested in craft, I'd say, oh yeah, there's a craft group runs here on such and such. If they could then make their own way, that's great. That's my job done. If they were anxious because they didn't know anybody, or and I'd say, well, okay, I'll meet you there if you like. So, you know, I could sit and have a coffee with them, or a cup of tea, and introduce them to people. If there was no way of them getting there initially, or if they said, oh, I don't know, then I'd say, look, all right, now how about this week I'll come and pick you up and we'll go around together. Even if, you know, very often you could go and walk around, because if it was in the same village, because you obviously try and get somebody involved in something that's local to them so that they can get to it without having to rely on public transport or anything else. And it's literally as simple as that. I linked two ladies together once that lived three doors apart. They didn't know each other. And they were both saying to me, when I went to see one and then went to see the other, both saying similar things, that they never see anybody really, and they don't do this and that. And I just sat there and I thought, well, I'll try something. And I said, I know somebody not too far away who's in a similar situation. Would you fancy meeting up? And they said yes. So I said the same thing to the other person. And within a short time, they'd met up, and they go off shopping now together. They have had a holiday away together. It was a bus holiday here and all the rest of it, but they regularly go shopping together. And so it was as easy as that, really. So in a nutshell, that's it. But it's massive. It's hard to say that we don't just focus on, you know, one area. It's many different areas. It could be neighbours that are having a dispute I've been involved in, or, you know, people come to me and say, oh, I need my garden clearing, but I've got no money, or such as the Desford Good Neighbours. I used to promote that a lot to people about, you know, being able to get lifts to the GP, or hospital appointments, or doing wee jobs around the house, or something like that, or a bit of shopping when somebody had been ill. So it's me very much knowing what's going on in the area, linking in with people such as yourselves, so that, you know, because you can't do it on your own, but it's really community focused. Rather than it being within social care, my old commissioning roles, you'd very much look at a paid for service as the to try and fix whatever was broken, if you like. We don't. We always look at what's in the community, and most of it is provided by volunteers, and so a lot of it is you know, on your doorstep. And so we try to access people into the local community. And that's it, really.
Okay, John?
So
yeah, go on.
No, I was just going to say, so if anybody's got any, because it is so wide. I mean, if I was in my old commissioning route, you've got a criteria, you've got and it's very fixed. This isn't. It's a great way of working because you could literally the amount of times. I mean, I was in somebody's house before COVID, and they were having terrible trouble getting stuff sorted out with the DWP, and I just said, look, would you like me to, you know, I'll ring if you. So I must have been on the phone for about an hour. And you know, a lot of people, they if they're looking after somebody, that's an awful long time to be able to stop trying to do something, because then all of a sudden you're halfway through the phone call, and you know the person that you're looking after wants something or something. You've then probably got to end the phone call, and then it starts again, and all this sort of thing. And the strain on some of the carers was horrendous. And so, you know, I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I sat on the phone for about, and bless him, he brought me a dinner in. It was a lovely piece of gammon and mashed potatoes and parsley sauce and an egg and all this bits and bobs, and it was smashing. So I'll never turn anything down like that. And it's a good way of just, you know, forming relationships, you know. So it's a lovely job, and it's a lovely way of working.
Right. So how will we do this? The questions then. I'm just going
to. John, I've got one for you. I've unmuted myself.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm unmuted. John, I mean, I'd start in a sense, Western Park, Leicester. Now, my wife, Eileen, who was a great friend of John Russell's wife, Shirley, she was diagnosed 3 years ago, almost to the month, at the Benyon Clinic in Leicester with vascular dementia. Now, I mean, what you said is amazing, absolutely blown away by what it sounds fantastic. But why geographically is your brief? I mean, are you county, are you north, west Leicestershire, or whatever? I mean, I'm city.
There isn't a local area coordination network in the city. As far as the county, it's Leicestershire County Council, so it's Leicestershire that we're in. So we've got people that cover Oadby, Wigston, Blaby, Northwest, Loughborough. We've got people in Melton. So sadly, it's not across the county or anything else. But what I will say, Martin, is that if anybody ever is out of the area or just wants some advice, I've got no problem with anybody ringing me up. And if I can find the answer for somebody, then I'll find the answer for somebody. I would never say, oh, I'm sorry, but I only do Desford, Newbold, Botcherson and Thornton. And then, you know, I'll do what I can to provide. You know, I've built up a lot of contacts over the years with people in dementia, mental health, Parkinson's, things like this. And believe it or not, I had somebody recently who was diagnosed with Parkinson's before COVID, just before COVID. And they said they came out of the hospital and they were given no information or anything. And they were shell shocked. And so I said, would you like me to put you in touch with the Parkinson's UK Leicestershire manager? Because I used to work with her, and they said, oh, yes, please. So I literally just phoned the manager and said, could you get in touch with, and she got in touch with them and provided them with loads of information, you know, the all sorts of things that should have been given at the point of the discussion in the first place, but wasn't. And so I'd happily help anybody out if I could.
Yeah, well, that was, okay, I don't want to monopolise this our conversation, but I was furious with the Benyon Clinic, because when she was diagnosed, I said, well, there's a bit of a history of cardiovascular problems in the family. There certainly was with Eileen's sister, though she didn't have dementia. And I won't mention the person's name at the Benyon Clinic. She said, oh, well, that's very common. And she just handed me a sheet of papers from the Alzheimer Society. Goodbye. That was it. Now, I'm blessed and very fortunate to have had, you know, good families, including Eileen's family, 4 supportive families, lots of friends in the church in Clarendon Park. But as far as the city goes, I was absolutely appalled that there's nothing. There was nothing at all. No one I could get in touch with at the time. And I did feel very sore about that. Okay, I've said my piece, but it's a great job you do.
Sadly as well, Martin, that a lot of people I've spoken to, I think things are going to get worse because of the impact of COVID and everything else. I think the delays and things like this. But I mean, I hope not. But speaking to people that have been trying to get in the system and who've got people that are waiting to get in the system at the minute, they're not really getting many answers, to be honest.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
There, Linda's got a question. Unmute yourself, Linda. Off you go. Can you do that?
Oh, yes.
Well done. Okay.
Yes. Well, as I said at the beginning, I'm involved with Desford Good Neighbours scheme, which obviously has had to halt everything during COVID. We are looking to have a meeting soon to see how we can get going again. But I'm concerned and wondered if you might be aware of, you know, there'll be more and more people who have been very lonely during this time, who've not been able to get out very much and might be quite scared to go out still, you know, even once we're giving the okay, in theory, to go out and about. But people are still going to be anxious and nervous, aren't they? And I'm sure this will be so in our community. And I think we would be looking for ideas to how we can find out which people will need more help and what kind of help, because I think it's going to be different from what we've done before.
I think you're right. It is. I mean, for example, something we did in during the COVID period, Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council had some activity packs. There was carrier bags with lots of stretchy bands, balls, lots of different things, instructions on how to play different games, and we gave those out in the early days to people, and then we made a note of who we'd given them to, and we said, look, as soon as we're able to, we're going to come together. We'd got gazebos and everything, and we held 2 events, and about 10 people came to each one. We had one in Newbold on the park and one in Barwell on the park, and people brought their activity. They were so desperate to get out, and the 2 physical activity coordinators from Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council, Liz Corson and Helen Smith, came out and did an activity session, albeit for only half an hour, 40 minutes. It was cold. People turned out all the same, and they loved it. They just loved being out, and we had a bit of a laugh. It was a really good session, and so we're planning on doing, you know, more of those. But I think you're right, Linda. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that are really going to be hesitant about coming out again and things like that. I was talking to Pat earlier on, and she said that the coffee and chat's opening up on Tuesday, and so I'm going to try and get along to that, because it'll be interesting to see how many people come along. And I think it's just going to be have to have a lot of thought and consideration as to what we can do. As I say, the wellbeing walks have been very good. Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council throughout the past 12 months have provided like befrienders for people. So again, to do a similar thing where they could take somebody for a walk. And they've been inundated, but I think that's going to be stopping, sadly. So absolutely. I think it is. And as I say, I've had one lady in one of the villages that she said to me, she says, well, what? She's ever so anxious about everything, absolutely everything. And she says, well, what can you do? She says, people have told me about you, but what can you do? I says, well, anything really. And then wherever we just have a walk and a talk for a start. And you know, the first one was a bit quiet and she was very anxious and all the rest of it. I think we're on a 4th now. She rings me and she says, can we have a walk this week? You know, and we're having the walks, and she's opening up to me now. And she's a lot. We got medication reviewed. That's been looking at, and so, you know, that's been a big bonus because she's on the up. And she says, "How do you think I am?" I says, "Well, I think you seem a lot brighter to me," and things like that. So it's literally just a walk and a conversation, and that's helping. So I think people are just going to need help in different ways, to be honest. And how that'll be, as from Monday, I can do home visits again. So with face coverings and gloves, if somebody was happy for me to go into their house, so long as they've got no symptoms, I've got the test kits that I can take and make sure that I'm okay. We can start doing home visits again, provided people are happy for me to come into the home. Newbold Baptist Church, for example, we used to run a half-day session for people just to drop into, have a coffee, a cake, bit of a chat, just a social thing. they've recognised that that's going to be needed a lot more. So they're going to do it for the whole day. Some of the volunteers that ran the group are doing wellbeing sessions, formal wellbeing sessions, so they can help people with low-level issues, if you like, because there's going to be a lot of the anxiety and so on and so forth that's going to come with it. So yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to join any discussion or whatever to see ways in which, I think until it sort of opens up myself and, you know, we see. I mean, hopefully on Tuesday there'll be a lot of people turn up, because again, the feeling I'm getting is that people are desperate to get out and see the face-to-face. I'm not a techie person. I've had a 2-hour, I think I've been on the computer now for about 4 hours today on different meetings. And I love the face-to-face stuff. I just think you build far better relationships. You know, you can have a laugh. You can be just light-hearted. And I just think it's for me, it's the best format of the lot.
I think the chapel are going to be doing something similar, aren't you, Sue? With your drop-in hub.
Yes, they are. Where's Sue?
Yes, I'm here. I've just unmuted myself.
Right.
Yeah, you're right, Linda. We're going to start a community cafe in the church, 3 mornings a week. Very, very informal. Drop in, make yourself a cup of tea. There'll be a little wellbeing group carrying on there as well for activities, and always be someone to chat to, and all very casual. We've got kiddies' toys so that young mums can come and have a chat and know that their kids will be fine. We've got Wi-Fi there so that if someone is working from home and just desperate to get out, there'll be good coffee and they can come and work away from home for a bit. So we're hoping that that's going to meet a fair bit of need. We'll see. So that's opening in June, called Your Space. So hopefully John has got lots of folks that he's interested in bringing to that as well.
Yeah, you see, they're the things that are really good for me to know, because as I'm doing my visits and round and about, very often you get phone calls and you can explain different things of interest to somebody over the phone. So it's really useful for me to know about these things so that I can introduce people into it, and happily do so. I mean, again, another little venture that we've been doing during COVID was I was contacted by a guy called Steve who runs the windmill at Brasket, and he'd had a few of his regulars donate some money to do some good stuff around the area, you know, just to bring a smile to people's faces, really. So he could do the meals and everything else, but he didn't know who to target. So 2 other people said, give me a ring. So he rang me, and his idea was that to perhaps do a Sunday lunch for carers and the cared for person. So it gave them a break, if you like, so that, you know, and so I set about, you know, identifying people for that. And to date, we've done about 80 meals on a Sunday. And also he does the frozen pies. So I think we've delivered about 120 frozen pies. Now, again, the feedback from people has just been wonderful, really, because you know, just think somebody's thinking about them, and that, you know, the kind gesture and all the rest of it. But the Sunday lunches have gone down a storm. I mean, the pies, myself and a guy called Rob Wade from Desford, we've been delivering them on Sundays, perhaps once every 3 weeks or a month. The pies, I mean, I've got to say, if you've never had them, do try them. They're absolutely amazing. The best pies I've ever tried. And we've dropped them off. Again, I delivered 2 lots to David at Desford Good Neighbours, and Desford Good Neighbours have delivered out to people who, you know, it's not necessarily for people that can afford it themselves and are quite happy to go down the super, but perhaps somebody who's been a bit under the weather or off the feet, or, you know, they've just come out of hospital or something like that. So, and I think, and then again to Pastor Fate at the Elohim Church in Boston, because she's got a big freezer capacity. So we're still doing that. So we've set up another round of lunches, 20 lunches for the 6th of June, I think. So if anybody knows of anybody in the Desford, Newbold, Bocheston area that's a carer or is going through a bit of a bad time, and you think that actually just by having a Sunday meal delivered to them would just, you know, bring a smile to the face or whatever, let me know, and then I'll put them down for the next I've got to say it's torture driving them around because the smell in the car is just unbelievable. But yeah, it's been a really nice, and it's really nice of the people that have donated the money. And Steve, I spoke to him the other day, and the money's still coming in. So hopefully we can look at doing something moving forwards with that, you know, as well. So
we've delivered 40 of the pies for you, and
yes, thank you.
They've been so appreciative. It's the fact somebody's knocked on their door and given them a gift, you know, it didn't really matter what it was, but they've all appreciated it very much. And as you say, apparently they're very, very tasty.
Oh, they're wonderful. Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't be eating them at 16.5 stone, but there we go. I mean, got some pleasures.
Supposed to deliver them, John, not eat them.
So yes, I mean, you know, I'm looking forward to getting back out as from Monday, being back out more, dropping into the groups. I'm hearing more and more groups are starting to look at opening up in June, things like that. Like next week, I've got a meeting with Jez Edwards next week, just down at the Sporting Desford there, just to see how we can, you know, work together again and you know, any plans he's got, and whatever, and just go from there. But it's like the carer service. It's not only what we do, but it's the other services that we can access people into. Voluntary Action South Leicestershire are a wonderful organisation that support carers, because sometimes, I mean, a lot of you will know that carers, you know, they go through an incredibly difficult time, and you know, it's about identifying the needs of the carer. And so we can get that done. We can look at benefits that people don't realise they're entitled to. And some people say, oh, I don't really, but it helps to pay for their care, and it helps to pay for other things that they might need. But the carer's assessment itself identifies the carer's needs, and then can perhaps provide, you know, some financial support or some other form of support for them to be able to just have a break themselves. So there's lots of other things to the role whereby, you know, it can support people in different ways, in just a purely and simply an individual way.
I've got a question.
Hi, John.
Hi, every now and again there's a television program which really stabs the conscience of the nation open. For example, Kathy Come Home many years ago showed up the plight of the homeless. There was one the other night which I think had quite an effect, of a well-known footballer who talked about domestic violence during his childhood. So my question to you, John, is if you could make a television program to be shown in the next few months, what would it be about? And in a way, that's to try and get you to say where the biggest need is. And let me add to that the men's group usually have a concert or some fundraising during the year, and they give it to different charities. Which would you nominate as being the most in urgent need at the moment of our help?
I think that's a really difficult. In terms of the television program, I mean, I'm really keen for, because literally the amount of phone calls we've taken in the early days, we've still been working from home. I've got to be honest. I mean, I used to knock off at the end of the day. My head was spinning because the amount of different requests coming through for this, that, and the other. It's been good because we've forged really good links with Hinckley and Bosworth Council and lots of other teams, people that we'd never worked with because they were in other departments that we didn't come into contact with, but because they've been asked to go and work doing phone calls or doing other things throughout the pandemic, we've got to know them. So that side of things has been great. But the amount of requests for, you know, face-to-face stuff for the groups and things like that, we're getting no end of introductions from our social care colleagues now for people, you know, what groups are up and running. Well, nothing still at the moment. But so for me, it would be the television programme, John, would be heavily focused on providing communities with as much support as possible to get as many of the groups that used to run and new ones up and running again as soon as possible. And my other concern about that is about the volunteers, because they were all run by volunteers, yourselves and everything else. The libraries, I mean, I know Tony works at, or at the library and things like that, and everything revolves around volunteers. Now, there may well be volunteers that are sort of going to say, now I've done my bit, I'll let somebody else take over. There might be a shortage of volunteers, so it might be looking at how we recruit new volunteers, how we go about that. But for me, for the communities I'm in, that's been the overwhelming thing. People are just the level of mental health issues, I think, is going to come out of the woodwork when everything opens up, because of the amount of isolation. I've been blessed with having a big family. I've got grandchildren, I've got children, all live near me. And I've still felt lonely at times because I've not been able to see them. My middle daughter gave birth in December, for example. I wasn't able to hug her when she told me that she was expecting, and that was all the case. I've only just started seeing my little grandson now and things like that, just through the windows we do it and stuff. And so there's all those sorts of things. So I think mental health is going to be well up there on the list of need. Yeah. And so to get the community groups back and running, I support them in whatever. And the other bit of your question, John, about what would be the most, it's hard to say, because I think a lot of the charities have not been having the income coming in that there would have been. But again, I'd be looking at something more local and things like that. I know that the Age UK have taken over the contract for the Alzheimer Society now for Leicester and whatnot. So that's now with Age UK. And so the Alzheimer's the dementia is a very worthy cause. I mean, I think the trouble is they're all very worthy, and they're all mean something different to somebody who's perhaps gone through dementia with somebody, or gone through Parkinson's, or gone through another condition with somebody. And so it's ever so difficult to say and target where the most, I just think it's a case of just individual needs, really, if we can. Right. So,
John,
I think a lot of money will be. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I was going to ask a question about you. So, as we listen to you, you obviously see, great joys when things go well, but you see a lot of sad things, a lot of tragic things. You talked about when you finish. I've listened to your answer phone that tells me what hours you work, yeah? And you said when you finish, your head's spinning. So what support do you get? And are you looking after yourself?
I've always been lucky in one way, Jim, because I can always switch off. I worked at Carlton Hayes for a long time with adults with severe and enduring mental ill health problems, and then at the Bradgate unit for a long time. And there was some really tragic cases there, people taking their own lives and things like this. And I learned to be able to just, so long as I know I've done my job and I've done as much as I can during that day to make sure somebody's safe and okay and got what we think is needed, then I can sort of switch off. And then, but I do trouble myself sometimes if I think, could I have done that differently, or could I have done this? But I'm also lucky because my other half, she's qualified. She's just retired, really, full time anyway. She's just retired from A&E. She's a mental health manager on the mental health triage unit. So she's qualified mental health nurse. So she's got so we don't talk about residents. We don't talk, but I'll just run things by her sometimes, or I'll go for a walk. But I try not to take things home with me, because that way, once you start doing that, it's not to say that it might not be on your mind and things like that. But if I think I've done as much as I can and I've done enough, then I'm sort of happy.
So it's
if
just,
that makes sense.
When you think about people that are professional counsellors, they'll always have either a peer or somebody that's up the chain where they can offload and to look after their own mental health. But I wasn't going to say this, but I wasn't sure what age you were, right?
32.
Since you mentioned that your wife's retired or near retirement, I was also thinking, I'll assume for the moment that you're not that far from retirement age. So is anybody doing anything to take your knowledge and your skills to make sure that this doesn't go when you go?
Well, I mean, hopefully. I mean, Alison's, because she's worked for health all her life, she's 55. So, I mean, I'm 60 this year. So,
Oh, you're just a young thing then.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, local area coordination. I mean, it's here to stay, really. I mean, I know I'm biased, I suppose, because, excuse me, I work in it, but it's by far the best job I've had in social. I loved working with the transitions team. I loved working with young people with learning disabilities and things like that, and their parents. But this, for me, is just you're given. I compare it to good old-fashioned social work. You know, you can just go out there and you can just have a conversation with somebody. You're not embroiled in loads of paperwork and loads of red tape and loads of assessments and this and that and the other. You know, it can just be a conversation. So you can sit down and have a natter. And I always try and pick a focal point. So if you sit down, you have a look round and pick a photograph or an object. You know, sometimes there's some militaria on the shelves and things like that. And just have a conversation. We don't get straight into it. Right, okay, then what can we do to sort of help? It's just a chat and try and build up that working relationship, because we do have to be careful. We do have to have boundaries. People do tend to think of you as a friend and other, and that's great. But you know, when we do, you know, at the end of the day, we are employed by LCC, and we have our own, you know, boundaries and rules and regulations, if you like. But you know, it's as I say, I just think I have taken stuff away with me, and I do get a bit upset at times and all the rest of it. But we do have debriefs with ourselves sometimes within our own team. But I'm a bit of I tend to just try and deal with it myself, if you like. And you know, by the time I've got home, that's why I liked working out of home, because my drive home, I'd often I only live over Whetstone way, so you know, I'd try and go the back way from Desford or Newbold, so it was a bit more country roadish. And by the time I got home, you know, it was a nice drive and all that. I've not sat in traffic at Foxhunter roundabout you know, and it was just, I felt a lot better having got home, you know. So, yeah.
Next question.
John, what sort of
Yes.
facilities are the hardest to find around in the villages?
I think transport crops up a lot, because if people want to get to somewhere else, I mean, you know, we often get that the buses stop at a certain time of night, or they don't run on a Sunday, or they don't do this or don't do that, and they don't do the other. So that's always difficult. I think sometimes as well, finding a space, and I know everybody's trying to, it's like the libraries. I mean, everybody's trying to do things in the libraries where it brings in an income, so the libraries can carry on. But sometimes there's no money available perhaps to run the group, or to perhaps pay the little bit of rent for the room or anything like that. So any sort of monies that are available at any time to help with those costs, because again, if a church is loaning us the hall or anything like that, then they've got heating, or they've got this, that and the other. So always looking for different funding streams, I suppose. But the one thing that comes back time and time again is the transport. So, and I mean, Desford Good Neighbours are brilliant, as is Dial Ride. But we used to get people say, oh, you know, I wanted to go into Leicester to see a show, but no good, because the buses, by the time the show's finished, you know, there's no buses coming back and all this sort of thing. So that was one thing that crops up time and time again. I think, to be honest with you, I mean, when you look back, I think, you know, Desford, Newbold, I mean, blessed with so many things going on. When you look back at how it was, and there was craft, there was cooking, there was lunches, there was coffee and chats, there was knitting natter. I mean, the knitting natter at the Desford Library. I mean, when we started to get that going again, there was just 3 ladies that wanted to get it going again. So we sat down, had a chat. We decided that rather than run it fortnightly, let's try it every week, because if somebody couldn't come one fortnight, it was a month before they'd perhaps seen anybody. So we eventually, I think that was getting regularly a dozen or more people sitting in the library, just having, some weren't knitting, some were just there for the chat, but it doesn't matter. They were just having a good get together and what have you. So there was always somewhere to go on a particular day. And I think that's going to be ever so important to get that back, and to be able to have the volunteers and what have you, to be able to run those groups, because it was lovely to see. I mean, I was, quite regularly dip into this group or that group and all the rest of it when I could. I couldn't do it as often as I'd like to, really, because I was doing a lot of one-to-one visits. But that's another important area for me, getting all those back, because it was just great. There was loads of stuff going on. Always something to go to on every day of the week, really.
Any more questions? We've made John work quite hard, haven't we? So thanks for that. I'm going to pass over. I think it's Brian. Are you going to?
It's me.
John. It's John. Okay, over to you, John.
Right. Well, we'd like to thank you, John, very much for this evening.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You packed a tremendous amount of detail without making it too difficult to follow. And we're very grateful for that. It was never boring and very interesting.
Oh, I'll let the missus know.
And we're very conscious of the tremendous amount of work you do. And we hope that tonight's Zoom perhaps will open up one or two channels of extra help for you. I'd like to thank also Ewan and Ross for doing the publicity, and for everyone else who's taken part. So thank you very much, John, and we look forward to working with you.
You're welcome.
In the future.
Could I just say one thing before I go? Is that, I mean, give yourselves a pat, because I've met so many of you in the community that do loads of stuff within your own areas and all the rest of it. Without you, it wouldn't happen. So, we can't do it without the likes of yourselves anyway. So, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation with anybody. I mean, I think John can give out my telephone number or my email address. And as I say, if you do find you've got somebody that you need a bit of support for, a bit of advice, just I'm happy to have a conversation. So please do feel free to get in touch. Thank you.
Anything you want to add, Brian?
He's muted.
Oh, it's muted, Brian.
I think, Brian, you need to unmute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, is there anything you want to add to what I said?
Not really. If I may just raise one other major subject, and that is the Alzheimer's UK. We've heard tonight of all the horror of what really is going on in the society, but there is also another thing going on which is almost legendary, which is seeking the cure for Alzheimer's. And next April, we will be having a concert at the Free Church, where we hope to raise money for Alzheimer's Society and the Alzheimer's UK, which is very, very important. There's a lot of work going on with respect to diagnosis, prevention and treatment and cure. And maybe we won't see it, but maybe our grandchildren will see an end to this terrible thing called Alzheimer's. And thank you, John. In the past, I have benefited from your care.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I'm just about sorting myself out now. Ruth, as you know, has been dead for over 2 years now. And to see a human being have to suffer like that, it's just not on. So there's two threads to this: looking after the people as they are now, but in the background, doing the research necessary to get at some of these brain disorders which seem to occur. So thank you, John, for what
You're
you
welcome. Thank you.
Jim. Hello, Jim. Can I suggest we all unmute ourselves so that we can thank John in the traditional way?
Yes.
I've very much appreciated your talk, John.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, I hope it's been sort of explained a bit more about what I do. Sometimes I get sort of carried away with it and you think, oh, I could have explained that better or that, but it's so broad. But thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, John. I was just going to get John or Brian to say when we're next meeting.
It's a history meeting, isn't it? Just a moment.
Just so because some people won't know.
Okay, let me just find out. Well, I've got round here.
Steve, isn't it? You're at the next meeting.
It's the Jim. It's the TED Talk.
Oh, yeah, I should know that because I'm doing one as well, aren't I? So, but so that's what date is that? Do we know?
June the 11th, I think.
Okay, so everybody that's here, the next time we're meeting, we're going to have these series of short TED Talks. They'll all be really interesting for quite a variety of things. We'll do that together, and you're most welcome to be part of that.
10th of June. 10th of June.
10th of June. Well done.
10th, sorry.
Okay, so sorry, wanted to make sure we got that, and then round of applause.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yes. Then thank you very much for inviting me along. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.